Hi friends, most of you watch my channel without subscribing. Please subscribe if you like my stories. Have a good rest. Story 1. My marriage ended with one trip. It was just another regular weekday when everything changed. I was sitting at my desk at work, typing away on my computer and thinking about what to make for dinner that night. My wife Lily and I had been married for 18 wonderful years and had twin boys who were now away at college. Our relationship had settled into a comfortable routine over the years, but something felt off lately. The passion and excitement from when we first met had faded. Most nights, we just sat together watching TV until it was time for bed. The intimate part of our marriage had slowed to barely a trickle. I hoped that things would improve once the boys moved out and we had the house to ourselves again. But that wasn't the case. That first month after they left, Lily and I made an effort to reconnect physically. We had sex in the living room, in the kitchen, even out on the back patio one night under the stars. It was fun for a while, but it felt like we were trying too hard. After that initial burst of energy, we found ourselves back in our old routine. Lily would work on her Pinterest crafts, and I would watch sports. At night, I could tell she wasn't really present when we made love. Her kisses felt obligatory and her touch was perfunctory. I wanted more from my wife, the passionate lover I used to know. I miss feeling desired. One weekend I came across an article online about how taking separate vacations could rekindle the spark of romance. The time apart made you miss each other, and the thrill of being reunited was said to increase attraction. Flirting with your spouse over text during the separation built anticipation too. I was skeptical, but Lily loved the idea when I suggested it. For the first time in months, I saw a spark in her eyes, a glow of excitement at doing something new and adventurous together. We decided to plan trips at the same time. Hers with a group of her girlfriends and mine with my college buddies. Lily wanted to go to Colorado for her trip. I was a little surprised, since she didn't have many fond memories of the small town she grew up in there. I decided my friends and I would go to Wyoming. I'd always wanted to visit Yellowstone National Park. Once we booked the flights and hotels, Lily started texting on her phone constantly, finalizing plans with her girlfriends, I assumed. I didn't want to be nosy, so I left her to it. My conversations with the guys were pretty straightforward. The days passed quickly, and soon it was time to depart. The night before we left, I asked Lily for a copy of her itinerary. I figured it would be good to know where she was each day in case of an emergency. She hesitated at first, claiming she needed to fix some mix-up dates, but eventually printed me a copy. It was filled with typical girly activities, yoga sessions, shopping trips, salon appointments. I gave her a long kiss goodbye at the airport and told her how much I would miss her. She said she would miss me too, but seemed distracted, like her mind was elsewhere. I tried not to let it bother me as I boarded my flight. This whole trip was for us to reconnect in the end. A little mystery and distance would make the heart grow fonder, or so I hoped. The first few days of the trip were great. Yellowstone was incredible and my buddies and I were having a blast. But by the third day, I started to really miss Lily. I kept picturing her radiant smile and infectious laugh. We texted back and forth sporadically, but her responses seemed short and not very interested in what I was up to. I confided in my friends that I was starting to have second thoughts about this whole separate vacation idea. They reassured me that this was normal and not to worry. By pushing through the discomfort of missing each other, we'd rekindle that honeymoon phase passion when reunited, they insisted. I tried to take their advice and make the most of my remaining days. But the next day, things took a turn for the worse. Lily basically stopped responding to my texts altogether. Her silence was deafening. I could hardly enjoy the scenic views and wildlife. I was so preoccupied worrying about her. Why wasn't she texting me like we agreed? Did something happen to her phone? Was she just busy with her girlfriends? Or was there something else going on? Dark scenarios played out in my mind, each one worse than the last. That night, I noticed something odd on the itinerary she'd given me. The restaurant her group had reservations at for dinner was just a 6-hour drive away from me. I made an impulsive decision to go there and try to find Lily. I had to see her face to know she was okay. I explained to my friends that I was going to drive across Idaho to check on her, make sure she was all right. They thought I was overreacting, but wished me well. I hit the road just after 1 p.m., hoping to reach the restaurant by 7 p.m. The long drive gave me plenty of time to think. Why was I feeling so insecure all of a sudden? Lily and I had been together nearly 20 years. We trusted each other completely. Maybe she was just enjoying her time away and didn't feel like texting much. But my gut told me something more was going on. I had to find out what it was. I arrived at the restaurant right at 7 p.m. and immediately spotted Lily's travel companions. I asked them where she was, but they only shared concerned looks. Finally, one of her friends named Jade spoke up. "Lily isn't here. She left us this morning, before any of us woke up. She sent a text saying she wouldn't be back tonight." My chest tightened with anxiety. Why would Lily abandon her friends without notice or explanation? Jade seemed very uncomfortable, like she was holding something back. After some prodding, she finally admitted that Lily had left them an address for emergency purposes. Lily had made Jade promise not to tell me if I came looking for her, but she could tell how worried I was. Jade gave me the address, which was not far away. She even offered to come along, sensing I could use some moral support. As we drove, she tried distracting me with small talk about her own life and family. I appreciated her kindness, but couldn't focus on anything but finding my wife. When we pulled up to the address, an average-looking house in a sleepy neighborhood, I felt sick to my stomach. There were no cars in the driveway, but it was still early evening. Around 9 p.m., a sedan pulled in and Lily emerged from the passenger side. I confronted her as she walked to the house, demanding to know what was going on. She looked utterly shocked to see me and quickly became defensive. She refused to explain anything, insisting that I leave immediately. Then the driver came around from the other side of the car. A rugged, handsome man I'd never seen before. He casually draped his arm around Lily's shoulders and introduced himself as her lifelong friend. In that moment, my universe collapsed. The truth stared me in the face, yet I struggled to comprehend it. Lily's distance lately, her evasiveness about the trip, it all suddenly made horrible sense. Rage welled up inside me, and before I knew it, I had punched the man squarely in the jaw, knocking him to the pavement. Lily let out a blood-curdling scream, calling me a monster and pleading for me to leave at once. She helped her friend up and hurried him into the house, refusing to even look at me. I stood there shaking, knuckles throbbing. Jade rested her hand on my shoulder and said we should go. Numbly, I got back into the car with her. As we drove to meet her friends, I spilled my guts, unleashing all the shock and anger boiling up inside me. How could Lily betray me like this, after so many years? Had she been planning to hook up with this mystery man all along? Is that why she chose this trip this time? I felt like the world's biggest fool. All the signs had been there, and I'd ignored them, trusting Lily completely. She had thrown away our marriage for a cheap fling with someone from her past. My heart was shattered into a million pieces. Jade listened compassionately and promised to stay with me for as long as I needed when we returned home. I didn't know how I would move on from this, but her friendship gave me the faintest glimmer of hope. Lily had proven our vows meant nothing to her, but I still had people who genuinely cared by my side. Update. I went to a divorce attorney and had him handle the divorce case. I never wanted to see my ex-wife. The first few weeks after I returned home were spent in a fog of grief and disbelief. My sons came to stay with me for a while, outraged at their mother's actions. My closest friends also took turns checking on me, dropping off food and sitting with me for hours while I vented. Jade became a regular presence at my house, visiting several times a week under the guise of keeping me company. But it soon became clear she was interested in more than just friendship. The first time she kissed me, I hesitated. Being intimate again so soon after Lily's betrayal felt strange. But Jade was patient and supportive, helping me work through my emotional baggage little by little. Her optimism balanced out my bitterness. When I was with her, the future looked a shade brighter. 3 months after that horrific trip, we officially started dating. Through the grapevine, I heard that Lily's fling with the mystery man ended after just a few months. Supposedly, he got tired of her neediness and broke things off. I can't say I felt sorry for her. It sounded like karma coming back around. I didn't bother trying to contact Lily at all over the next year. I knew she would try to justify her actions or beg for another chance, neither of which I was interested in entertaining. As far as I was concerned, the woman I loved had died on that vacation. This new Lily was a stranger to me. Just over a year after our split, I logged into an old email account and discovered Lily had been sending me messages every week since I'd left her. She fluctuated between seething anger at my refusal to speak to her, desperate pleas to meet and talk things through, and profound sadness over losing me. Reading her anguished letters, I'd almost felt pity for all the suffering she had brought upon herself. But those feelings faded quickly. I was blissfully happy with Jade now, and Lily no longer had any power over my heart. Her deceptions had hardened me into someone who could withstand these emotional manipulations. Ultimately, I hope my story serves as a cautionary tale about the temptations of infidelity. One single choice to betray those closest to you can upend countless lives. Even if Lily felt our marriage had grown stale, pursuing an affair was the worst way to handle it. I don't hate her for what happened, but I will never allow her back into my life intimately again. My trust in her is utterly decimated. This experience taught me that people show you who they really are eventually. I should have recognized the signs sooner. But now I'm focused on the future, not the past. Life does go on, even after the worst kind of heartbreak. Story 2. My spouse's secret life. When I think back to that fateful day, it started out like any other. I went to work, ate lunch at my desk while catching up on emails, and was looking forward to clocking out at 5 p.m. Little did I know my entire world was about to be turned upside down. My wife Jenny and I had been married for 3 wonderful years. She was my whole heart, my best friend in the world. We met in college and were drawn to each other's laid-back artistic spirits. Jenny had a rough childhood, so I always aimed to make her feel safe, supported, and loved. After college, Jenny struggled to find a career path that inspired her. She earned some money making and selling artsy home goods online. I never wanted to rush or pressure her into traditional work if it would make her unhappy. Our relationship was rock solid, and financially we were comfortable enough on my salary alone. Which is why the phone call I received around 2 p.m. that day completely blindsided me. It was from a police officer in the next county over. He said my wife Jennifer had just been taken into custody for arson. I literally thought I misheard him at first. There had to be some mistake. But he confirmed it. They had multiple witnesses who saw a woman matching Jenny's description, setting a car on fire in a quiet residential neighborhood. When the police arrived, they'd found Jenny standing right by the burning vehicle. She wasn't willing to make a statement, which only increased the officer's suspicion. My mind was reeling. Why on earth would my sweet, gentle wife do something so destructive and dangerous? I told the officer I would come to the station right away and try to talk to her myself to get to the bottom of this. I had no idea what I was walking into. When they led me into the interview room to see Jenny, the look on her face was one of pure anguish. She seemed ashamed to make eye contact with me. I asked her as soothingly as I could what was going on and why she would set someone's car on fire. At first, she refused to speak, claiming the truth would only hurt me. But I insisted I could handle it, and knowing the real story was better than letting my imagination run wild. Finally, staring down at the table, she confessed in a shaky voice. The car belonged to my ex-boyfriend. I found out last night that he cheated on me, and I wanted to get revenge. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Ex-boyfriend. Cheated on her. I asked her to explain herself fully, thoroughly confused and alarmed. That's when the whole ugly story came spilling out. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me as Jenny's confession washed over me. Her voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes downcast with shame. A few months ago, I reconnected with Jason. We dated back in high school. I'm not even sure how I found him online, but we started messaging back and forth, catching up. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Jason had been her first love, the one she never fully got over, even after all these years. Jenny continued, "At first it was harmless, just two old friends chatting. But the conversations got more frequent, more intimate. Before I knew it, we were texting daily. I could picture her lighting up every time a new message from him arrived, their old feelings reigniting through the screen. We started meeting up for coffee or lunch when you were at the office. It felt exciting, nostalgic. But deep down I knew it was reckless and wrong. I never intended for it to go so far." Her voice broke on the last word. I felt sick to my stomach, imagining the two of them laughing together, lost in old memories. Jenny took a shuddering breath before continuing. "Last night, I found out Jason had been sleeping with another woman this whole time. He'd been playing us both. For the first time, I saw a flash of anger in her eyes at the betrayal." She went on, "In that moment, something just snapped in me. The years of hurt and jealousy from our messy breakup in high school came flooding back. Without thinking, I drove over to Jason's place and set his flashy sports car on fire. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain I was feeling." I sat there stunned as the weight of her words sunk in. My wife had been unfaithful and then committed a horrific act of vengeance. This was not the woman I thought I knew. Rage, grief and disbelief roared through me as I tried to process it all. I was absolutely floored by this admission. Never in a million years did I expect Jenny to betray and deceive me like this. Learning that your spouse has been unfaithful is its own special kind of torture. But then hearing she also did something so reckless and illegal in response took it to a whole new level. I felt sick, furious, crushed all at once. In that moment, any shred of love or loyalty I had left for Jenny died inside me. I told her plainly that we were over, and I could no longer be her husband after the choices she had made. As I stormed out of the police station, I knew my life would never be the same again. In the weeks following Jenny's arrest, I learned more about the fallout from her crimes. Since she refused to cooperate with the investigation or name her accomplice, they held her until bail could be posted. Jenny called her estranged grandmother, who had raised her, to pay the amount. But having been out of touch for years, a grandmother assumed it was some kind of scam and didn't follow up. Jenny sat in jail for 3 more weeks until she finally tracked her down. Her elderly grandmother had to take out a sizable loan to afford the bail. She was absolutely shocked by Jenny's behavior, ashamed that her own flesh and blood could act in such a disgraceful manner. Once released, Jenny tried desperately to contact me, calling me sometimes 15 times a day. I refused to speak to her at first, still processing my own anger and grief about the situation. After 2 weeks, I agreed to meet her for coffee, against my better judgment. I told myself I owed her at least a conversation after 3 years together. Sitting across from her at a cafe table, she looked so small and broken. Her eyes pleaded with me to give her another chance, insisting she had made a horrible mistake but still loved me. Sobbing, she begged me to try to forgive her. But I remained stoic and unmoved. I told her plainly that any relationship we had was dead and gone forever. She made a mockery of our marriage vows and then committed a felony to cover up her own affair. Her actions had destroyed my ability to trust her completely. Jenny wailed and clung to me as I got up to leave, causing a scene. I had to peel her off just to walk away. My heart ached, but I knew I could never take her back. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew. That woman had only existed in my imagination. Update. 4 months after our split, Jenny's aunt contacted me. She was coming by to collect the last of Jenny's belongings from the house. In that time, Jenny's grandmother had passed away and her home went into foreclosure. So Jenny was moving in with her aunt. I wondered how Jenny was coping and adjusting, but stopped myself from asking her aunt for any details. I had started dating someone new and didn't want to reopen old wounds. Jenny had made her choices and was living with the consequences. For me, focusing on the future instead of the past was essential to healing. I made an effort to get out my emotions in a healthy way, hitting the gym to release anger and showing myself kindness by doing activities I enjoyed. My life wasn't what I planned, but it was still mine to live. This painful chapter taught me you can never really know someone completely, even your spouse. Jenny kept an entire secret life hidden from me for months and might have continued if she hadn't been caught. Her decisions didn't just affect her, but our shared family and friends too. I hope everyone listening to this story realizes that cheating and deception can cause irreparable damage to relationships. Nothing is worth risking your integrity and values. Dishonesty destroys the foundation of trust on which relationships are built. My marriage crumbled under the weight of secrets and lies. Some life lessons come at a heavy cost, but they make you stronger and wiser in ways you can't imagine. I'm still healing, but know I'll get through this, just like I've overcome every other challenge so far. The future brings hope, no matter how dark the present may seem. My story goes on.